We talked about it a couple weeks ago, but could Miami actually pursue a Myles Garrett trade with the Cleveland Browns? ESPN dropped an article linking what teams could actually go after the star edge rusher and former decoy, and the Dolphins were listed as a possible suitor. Before we show you what ESPN said and talk about acquiring Myles Garrett, I want to know your thoughts. Should the Dolphins be one of the teams that reaches out to Cleveland to try to get Myles Garrett to the 305? Let me know your thoughts. Today's pinned comment. Type Y for yes or type N for no. So ESPN went through different tiers of teams on which teams can't do it, which teams could do it, who's the most likely, and the Dolphins fell into this group of 8 teams that is unlikely to pursue Myles Garrett, but plausible. You see the teams here, all of them are rosters that are competitive, but struggle in terms of their cap space at times. And I wanted to share what ESPN said exactly on Miami, because they did share a couple paragraphs. By virtue of being in Miami and having aggressive ownership, the Dolphins are in on every star player who comes available via trade. Edge is a difficult spot to handicap for Miami. First-round pick Chop Robinson looked like a star over the second half of last season. The team drafted Robinson because of the uncertainty surrounding their veterans in Chubb and Jalen Phillips, both of whom were coming off season-ending injuries. Chubb ended up sitting out the season, while Phillips returned earlier than expected, only to suffer a torn ACL. Chubb is on a long-term deal, but Phillips is entering his 5th-year option and Robinson is year 2 of his rookie pact. The Dolphins could theoretically move Chop Robinson as the primary portion of a Garrett package and create an opening, but there are just too many holes elsewhere on their roster to think that's a likely swap. And I do actually agree with that last part to a degree, where it's unlikely that the Dolphins would pursue a Chop Robinson Myles Garrett swap. One, Miami would have to attach draft capital alongside Chop Robinson. Even though Chop is looking like a stud, the Browns are not just going to want Chop for Myles Garrett, because Garrett is 29 years old and still a decoy. But when you talk about what Miami would do to create a roster spot for Myles Garrett, that's where I disagree. Because if the Dolphins did try to pursue a Garrett trade, they would move off of Bradley Chubb to create a hole for Garrett on this roster, not Chop Robinson. So after that kind of disagreement I had, let's look back at Myles Garrett and the info on his background, since he did request a trade from Cleveland 2 weeks ago. He's still 29 years old, will turn 30 near the end of this 2025 NFL season. He is under contract for 2 more years. So if you acquired him now, you would get him guaranteed for 25 and 26 at a relatively good price point, $19 and $20 million respectively. Now, if you did trade for Myles Garrett, you would have to give him a new extension. That is what he is seeking. 4 years, $137 million, which comes out to about $34.25 a year. Kind of bonkers to pay an edge rusher that much, but that's how good he is. Luckily, though, it would not come in and kick in until 2027, so you'd have 2 years of a relatively good price point on a decoy level player for the Miami Dolphins. And before we go more in depth on Garrett the player and if Miami could actually do it, make sure you are subscribed, because we're putting out videos on a daily basis, latest trade rumors, Dolphins news, and more. So hit that sub button and join the channel right now. If you added Myles Garrett to this roster, you would be getting a top 3 defensive player in the NFL without a question. I mean, having a combined 32 sacks, and then you add another 28, 60 sacks in the last 4 seasons is absolutely ridiculous. He is a meaningful player in the run game as well. It's not like he just gets after the quarterback and that's it. He's a 3-down player. He can get into the run game, make plays behind the line of scrimmage, force turnovers as well. He is every NFL's team dream in terms of what they get at the edge position. They are, and having him potentially on this defensive line would be an absolute game changer. He's a top 3 defensive player in the league. Now, you can argue who that actually is. Him, TJ Watt, Max Crosby, Micah Parsons, Fred Warner. List goes on and on. There's a ton of good defensive players, but Garrett is right there amongst the top players in the league because of his multi-fashion defensive approach in the run game and in the pass rushing game. And if you had a trio in that hypothetical move of moving Bradley Chubb in a post-June 1st cut and trading for Garrett, a Jalen Phillips, Myles Garrett, Chop Robinson trio at edge would be the best edge group in the NFL without a question. And we'll talk more here in just a second, but we are sponsored by Mando, the #1 whole body deodorant, which makes sure you're not the most smelly person in the room, which is a big thing for me. It also gives me confidence when I leave the house, and especially when I'm going on dates this time of year, because in February it's time to get down to it. Mando is safe to use anywhere on your body. It's created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO is being misdiagnosed and mistreated. It's clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. The starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, plus free shipping. Couple products in studio today, the ones that I constantly use all the time. My favorite scent that Mando has, the Mount Fuji stick deodorant, plus the deodorant wipes, which helps me on the go when I'm traveling, when I'm just out running errands, if I get a little sweaty. Listen, in the summer, it gets hot in Dallas, Texas. I got to make sure I'm still smelling good when I'm out in public. And we got a great special for the listeners today. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code CHAT. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you use code CHAT at shopmando.com. shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. All right, let's get back to Myles Garrett now, because we showcased the raw numbers that he puts up on the defensive side of the ball. But how about the advanced numbers? Since 2022, we showed it. 44 sacks. He has the most in the NFL in that time frame. He's the #1 graded defensive player in the last 3 years as well, with an astounding 95.1 grade. But the part that's the most fascinating to me is that in pure pass rush situations, his win rate when he's running after the quarterback is #1 in all football over the last 3 seasons at 24.4%. And you know who was also a top 8 pass rusher in win rate in the second half of the season last year? Oh yeah, rookie Chop Robinson. So when you look at what the Dolphins could have at edge, it's absolutely potentially one of the best groups in all football. I mean, I would project if the Dolphins actually went after Myles Garrett and acquired him via trade, you would then move Jalen Phillips kind of to that third edge rusher as he finishes out his rookie contract. Remember, he's playing on the 5th-year option this year, and then this could be his last season in Miami. You move off of Chubb. Phillips ease him back after an ACL injury, an Achilles injury 2 years ago. Chop and Myles are your 2 top edges rushers with Phillips in rotation. It makes a lot of sense to me with Mo Kamara being that 4th guy. And the reason why there is a small path to acquiring Myles Garrett is because the financial aspect of it is actually feasible. If you release Bradley Chubb, who is on a long-term contract, but if you released him post-June 1st designation, it frees up $19.5 million in cap space. We showed you Garrett's contract earlier. A team in Miami would be acquiring $19.6 million for 2025, which means you could essentially just swap out Bradley Chubb for Myles Garrett and boost your pass rush to a different level. It ranked 27th in football in 2024. 2.1 sacks per game. That area is an obvious need of improvement for the Dolphins, and Myles Garrett would add quite a bit to a group of Jalen Phillips, Mo Kamara, and Chop Robinson. But with the Bradley Chubb situation, that's the intriguing part, because he's been good in Miami since they acquired him via trade with the Denver Broncos, but just missed an entire year due to injury. Do you want to cut Bradley Chubb to get that $19.5 million regardless of Myles Garrett, or trying to get Myles Garrett? Type C if you want to cut Chubb, type K if you want to keep him. I truly believe that the Dolphins should release Bradley Chubb with a post-June 1st 1 designation, regardless of if they go after a Myles Garrett trade or not. Yeah, you can make the money equal and fit, but the truth is Miami needs to make so many additions to this roster: safety room, interior defensive line, interior offensive line, off-ball linebacker 2, some potential additions to the wide receiver and backup quarterback department. You need that $19.5 million in cap space, especially since you have the 3rd lowest amount of cap space right now, as you're in the negatives, you're in the red at $15 million. So you need to get into the green, positive, before the new year starts, and you need to be able to add some people in free agency and through the draft with that cap space. But if you did ultimately trade for Myles Garrett, what would it cost? This is what I would think a trade would look like. Dolphins get Myles Garrett. The Browns get a first-round pick this year, 13th overall selection by Miami, a first-round pick in 2026, and a third-round pick in 2026. The Browns, in any trade discussions, will want 2026 draft capital because I am unsure if they would draft a QB at the number 2 pick. If they trade Myles Garrett, I think they go Abdul Carter with the second pick out of Penn State to replace Myles Garrett and then just kind of push their QB draft needs to a better quarterback class in 2026, which is why they need more capital if they need to move up next year, or they could just sit at home, draft a QB, and then use that other pick somewhere else. So they're going to want some 2026 draft capital. And to round out today's show, I do want to make it clear that I'm actually not in on a Myles Garrett trade. I talked about it. I wanted to revisit the conversation today because ESPN linked Miami as a plausible suitor, but I don't think it makes the Dolphins immediate Super Bowl contenders. Does it improve the defense drastically right away? No doubt about it. It becomes one of the best pass rushers in football and elevates Miami's defense to top 5, top 7. But truly, in my opinion, the Dolphins won't be Super Bowl contenders until they fortify the offensive line. And I'm not sure if they sent all that draft capital to Cleveland and had to allot a lot of that money in free agency that they freed up from Bradley Chubb to Myles Garrett this season and extending him with a 4-year deal. I don't think you're able to address that offensive line to the fullest abilities that you need to. So to me, I'm passing on Myles Garrett, keeping the draft capital, and using those picks to help build out a more complete roster that can help you win now. Because I think the path to a Super Bowl is more using those picks to get cheaper players that are productive and helpful, more than just spending big on a big-time trade. So to me, I'm passing on a Myles Garrett trade, but you can let me know your thoughts down in the comments section, and make sure you're subscribed as well because we are putting out content every single day. We have a nice little rapport here between us and you guys in the comments section. I love hearing what you guys have to say, your feedback on our shows, so make sure you subscribe for daily content.